Picture this July 1947. America's farms are crying out for affordable horsepower, and Ford rolls out a gray and red beauty that would change agriculture forever. The Ford 8N wasn't just another tractor, it became the best-selling individual tractor model of all time in North America. 10. The revolutionary three-point hitch system. The Ford 8N featured Harry Ferguson's revolutionary three-point hitch system, though by 1947, Ford and Ferguson had already parted ways, and what became one of agriculture's most famous lawsuits eventually settled for $9.25 million in Ferguson's favor. This system was pure genius in its simplicity. Unlike the old drawbar method where implements were simply dragged behind like a trailer, the three-point hitch made the implement and tractor work as one solid unit. This wasn't just about convenience. The system transferred the weight and resistance of whatever you were pulling directly to those rear drive wheels, giving you traction that would make modern tractors jealous. Before this innovation, farmers regularly died when their tractors hit an immovable object, and flipped backward, the old Fordson was notorious for this deadly habit. The Ferguson system's upper link point forced the front of the tractor down instead of up when hitting resistance, saving countless lives. The hydraulic controls let operators raise and lower implements from their seat, automatically controlling depth based on soil conditions. This draft control system could sense when the plow hit harder ground and adjust accordingly. While other manufacturers scrambled to develop competing systems like International Harvester's Fast Hitch and Allis-Chalmers' Snap Coupler, none matched the elegant efficiency of what the 8N delivered. Even today, every modern tractor uses essentially the same three-point design, making the 8N system arguably the most important agricultural innovation of the 20th century. 9. Affordable price point for small farms. When the Ford 8N hit dealerships in 1947, it carried a price tag that made small farmers actually believe they could afford mechanization. By 1952, you could drive one home for about $1,404, roughly $16,000 in today's money. Compare that to the heavy, expensive alternatives from International Harvester or John Deere, and you understand why the 8N flew off dealer lots. This wasn't charity work from Ford. Henry Ford had grown up on a farm and understood that America's food came from thousands of small family operations, not giant corporate spreads. The 8N was deliberately engineered for the farmer working 40 to 160 acres, not the massive wheat operations out west. These were folks who'd been farming with horses or making do with worn-out equipment from the 1920s. The genius was in the economics. At approximately 23 to 27 horsepower, depending on measurement, the 8N delivered enough muscle to handle a two-bottom plow, disc harrow, or mower without breaking the bank on fuel. A farmer could work all day on a few gallons of gas compared to feeding and maintaining a team of horses year-round. The math was simple. One 8N could do the work of 6 horses, didn't need rest on hot days, and never needed new shoes. The financing options Ford offered through dealers made ownership even more accessible. Many farmers bought their 8N by trading in horses, old equipment, or even taking out loans against future harvests. This democratization of farm mechanization literally changed who could succeed in agriculture. Suddenly, the little guy had a fighting chance against bigger operations, leveling a playing field that had been tilted toward wealth since farming began. Before we move on to the next one in the list, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you're enjoying this content so far, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch these videos without subscribing. Imagine what we could accomplish if everyone subscribed. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us, thanks to all of you who do. 8. Post-war perfect timing. The Ford 8N's July 1947 debut couldn't have been better timed if they'd had a crystal ball. World War II had just ended. American GIs were flooding home to start families and farms, and the economy was roaring like a lion. Those returning servicemen had learned to operate military equipment overseas and weren't intimidated by machinery. They came home with savings, GI Bill benefits, and a determination to build something better than what they'd left behind. America's agricultural landscape was primed for revolution. During the war, farms had been pushed to maximum production with minimal labor as young men served overseas. Women, older farmers, and kids had kept things running with whatever equipment they could patch together. Now, with labor returning but expectations for production remaining high, mechanization wasn't just convenient, it was essential. The government's push for increased food production to feed war-torn Europe added urgency to modernization efforts. The 8N arrived just as rural electrification was spreading across America, making the tractor's electrical system with battery, generator, and starter seem modern rather than exotic. Compare this to the hand-crank magneto systems on many competitors, and the 8N looked like it came from the future. Veterans who'd maintained Jeeps and tanks in Europe or the Pacific weren't scared of basic maintenance, and the 8N's straightforward design spoke their language. Credit was readily available in the post-war boom, and Ford dealers were practically giving terms to anyone with decent land and a work ethic. The combination of available capital, experienced operators, and genuine need created the perfect storm for the 8N's massive success. This timing helped Ford sell over 500,000 units in just 5 years. 7. 4. Speed transmission upgrade. The 8N's 4-speed transmission was a game-changer that previous N-Series owners immediately appreciated. While the 9N and 2N had made do with 3 gears, the 8N's extra gear transformed what this tractor could accomplish. That 4th gear wasn't just another number, it represented flexibility that farmers desperately needed. First gear would crawl through the deepest mud or pull the heaviest loads without stalling. Second and third handled your field work at different speeds depending on conditions and implements. But that 4th gear, that was your road gear, your get-to-town gear, your move between fields without wasting half the morning gear. In 4th gear, you could actually drive to the feed store without holding up traffic or taking all day. The transmission itself was built like a bank vault. Those straight-cut gears might have whined a bit, but they could handle abuse that would destroy modern synchronized transmissions. Farmers routinely report 8 nanoseconds with original transmissions still shifting smooth after 70 years of hard use. The gear pattern was simple and intuitive, no complicated shift patterns or confusing positions. Even a kid could learn it in 5 minutes. The clutch was another masterpiece of simplicity. Unlike some competitors with complicated multi-disc setups, the 8N used a straightforward single dry disc that any competent farmer could replace in his barn with basic tools. Parts were cheap, adjustment was simple, and when properly maintained, that clutch would last decades. The whole system exemplified Ford's philosophy: make it simple, make it strong, and make it so farmers can fix it themselves. 6. Position control hydraulics. The 8N introduced position control to the hydraulic system when it debuted in 1947. And this wasn't just Ford trying to sidestep Ferguson's patents, though that was certainly part of it. This innovation gave farmers unprecedented control over their implements. The original Ferguson system only had draft control, which automatically adjusted implement depth based on soil resistance. Great for plowing, but not so great for everything else. Position control let you set your implement exactly where you wanted it and keep it there, regardless of what the ground was doing. Running a grader blade, position control kept it level. Using a post hole digger, position control held it steady at the depth you set. This flexibility transformed the 8N from a plowing specialist into a true all-purpose machine. Farmers could finally use one tractor for dozens of different jobs without compromise. The hydraulic pump was driven directly off the engine, providing consistent pressure whenever the engine was running. The system operated with enough muscle to lift heavy implements, but not so much that seals and hoses constantly blew out. The control lever was positioned perfectly. You could reach it easily from the seat, but it wasn't in the way during operation. The feedback through that lever told experienced operators exactly what their implement was doing without looking back. The touch control lever, as Ford called it, became the standard other manufacturers tried to copy. The hydraulic reservoir was built into the transmission case, keeping the fluid warm in winter and reducing the number of potential leak points. When competitors started adding position control to their tractors, they were essentially admitting Ford had gotten it right. This system was so well designed that many 8 nanoseconds still have functioning original hydraulics, testament to engineering that prioritized longevity over planned obsolescence. 5. Built like a tank, simplicity and durability. The Ford 8N's 4-cylinder engine was essentially a truck engine adapted for farm use, and that wasn't a compromise, it was genius. This 120 cubic inch flathead L-head engine produced approximately 23 to 27 horsepower depending on measurement method, which doesn't sound like much until you realize it could run all day at full throttle without breaking a sweat. The compression ratio of 6 to 1 meant it would run on pretty much anything flammable farmers joke about running them on kerosene when gas was expensive. Maintenance was something any farmer could handle with basic tools. The oil bath air cleaner just needed occasional cleaning and fresh oil. The updraft carburetor had minimal parts, and you could rebuild it on your tailgate with a screwdriver and pliers. Points and plugs were readily available at any auto parts store because they were similar to Ford trucks used. The cooling system was dead simple. A water pump, radiator, and thermostat. No complicated emissions equipment, no computer controls, just mechanical simplicity at its finest. The electrical system was revolutionary for its time, but simple by any standard. 6 volts was enough to spin that starter and keep the lights burning. The generator charged whenever the engine ran above idle, and the voltage regulator had minimal connections. When something electrical failed, you could diagnose it with a test light and fix it with parts from the local Western Auto. Stories of 8N durability are legendary. Farmers report tractors with thousands of hours still running strong on original engines. Units that sat abandoned in fields for decades often fire up with fresh gas and a battery. The cast iron construction meant things bent before they broke, and when they did break, any local welding shop could fix them. This wasn't planned obsolescence, this was equipment built to outlive its owner. 4. Mass production success. Ford built 524,000 units of the 8N between 1947 and 1952, making it the most produced tractor model of its era. To put that in perspective, Ford was rolling out approximately 400 tractors every working day for 5 straight years. The Highland Park, Michigan assembly line that built these machines was a marvel of efficiency, applying Henry Ford's assembly line principles to agricultural equipment. This massive production volume created something special: universal parts availability. When every third tractor in the county was an 8N, every dealer, parts store, and junkyard had what you needed. Break a drawbar on Saturday? The neighbor probably had a spare. Need a water pump? The dealer had 6 on the shelf. This ecosystem of parts and knowledge made owning an 8N almost risk-free. You were never more than a phone call away from whatever you needed. The production numbers also meant Ford could keep improving the design without radical changes. The 1950 edition of the side-mounted distributor and proof meter happened seamlessly. Improvements in metallurgy and manufacturing were incorporated without fanfare. Each year's model was slightly better than the last, but parts remained interchangeable. A 1952 hydraulic pump would bolt right onto a 1947 model. The sheer volume also created a massive knowledge base. Every mechanic knew these tractors inside and out. Every farming magazine ran articles about 8N maintenance and modifications. County extension agents taught classes on getting the most from your 8N. This collective expertise meant even novice farmers could successfully operate and maintain their tractors. The 8N became not just a machine, but a shared cultural experience across rural America. 3. Universal implement compatibility. The 8N's true genius was its ability to work with almost any implement designed for the 3-point hitch. Ford's Dearborn implement line offered everything from plows to post-hole diggers, but the beauty was you weren't locked into Ford equipment. Any manufacturer building to the 3-point standard would work, creating a competitive marketplace that benefited farmers. The Power Takeoff PTO shaft could power an incredible variety of equipment. Mowers, balers, generators, sawmills, corn shellers, and dozens of other implements could tap into that power. The PTO was positioned perfectly high enough to clear obstacles, but low enough for easy hookup. The shield was removable for equipment that required it. Those safety advocates today would have concerns about some of the practices of that era. The hydraulic remotes and electrical connections supported increasingly sophisticated implements as the years went on. Creative farmers and equipment manufacturers developed implements nobody at Ford had imagined. Front-end loaders, backhoes, and dozers transformed 8 nanoseconds into miniature construction equipment. 3-point carrier frames let you mount cultivators and other row crop equipment. The aftermarket exploded with accessories and modifications. This adaptability meant the 8N could evolve with changing farm needs. Start with basic plowing and mowing, add a loader when you built that barn, mount a blade for snow removal, hook up a sprayer when you expanded the orchard. One tractor could remain useful through decades of changing operations. This flexibility is why you still see 8 nanoseconds working today. They can adapt to modern small farms, landscaping businesses, and hobby operations in ways their contemporaries couldn't. 2. The two-tone paint job. That distinctive red body with light gray sheet metal wasn't just about looks, though it certainly turned heads. The 8N's paint scheme marked a deliberate break from the all-red 9N and 2N, signaling this was something new and improved. Ford wanted farmers to know immediately that this wasn't just another N-Series tractor, but the next evolution. The paint itself was industrial enamel, tough enough to withstand weather, fuel spills, and the general abuse farm equipment endures. That lighter gray on the hood and fenders made the tractor appear more modern and less industrial than the solid-colored competition. It also served a practical purpose. The lighter color stayed cooler in summer sun and showed oil leaks or damage more readily than dark paint would. The red and gray became so iconic that it's now protected by collector groups who debate the exact shade specifications with religious fervor. 8N red and 8N gray are recognized colors in the restoration community. When Ford tried to change the scheme on later models, farmers complained so loudly they went back to the original. Even today, when someone says Ford tractor, most people picture that red and gray 8N. The scripted Ford logo on the hood sides, which appeared in late 1950, added another touch of class. This wasn't just stamped letters, but elegant script that suggested pride in craftsmanship. The overall appearance projected exactly what Ford wanted: reliable American engineering with just enough style to make you proud to own it. That paint scheme became so associated with dependable farm equipment that other manufacturers started offering two-tone options, though none achieved the 8N's iconic status. 1. 500,000 strong legacy. The ultimate testament to the 8N's greatness isn't in specifications or sales figures. It's in the fact that thousands are still working today, over 70 years after production ended. Visit any farm auction or equipment dealer, and you'll likely find an 8N for sale, often still earning its keep. These aren't museum pieces, but working tractors that continue to prove their worth every single day. The 8N created a culture that persists today. Online forums buzz with restoration advice, modification ideas, and troubleshooting help. Parts suppliers still stock everything from complete engines to the smallest gaskets. Machine shops still have the specs to rebuild any component. You can build an entire 8N from aftermarket parts if you want to. This isn't nostalgia, it's recognition that the design was fundamentally right. The influence extends far beyond the machines themselves. The 8N taught a generation of Americans that farming could be efficient, profitable, and even enjoyable with the right equipment. It proved that good engineering beats complexity every time. Modern compact tractors, despite all their advances, still follow the basic template. The 8N established enough power for real work, simple enough to maintain, and affordable enough for small operations. Young farmers today buy 8 nanoseconds as their first tractor because they know it'll do the job and teach them valuable skills. Collectors restore them because they represent an era when American manufacturing was unmatched. Hobby farmers choose them because they're still practical tools, not just antiques. When a machine remains relevant 7 decades after its design, that's not luck, that's legendary engineering meeting real-world needs perfectly. The Ford 8N wasn't just a tractor, it was a revolution on wheels that democratized farming and proved that simple, solid engineering beats fancy features every time. From that handshake deal between Ford and Ferguson to the 500,000 units that rolled off the assembly line, the 8N earned its place in history through sheer reliability and practical innovation. Whether you're lucky enough to own one or just appreciate mechanical excellence, the 8N's legacy continues to inspire. Hit that subscribe button if you want more stories about the machines that built America, and drop a comment if you've got your own 8N story